Good afternoon, everyone.
And then I have a real express bus, a down to bus from.
Careers in nonprofit, charitable, non-governmental, and social justice organizations. My name is Sandra Yu. I'm the employer and alumni liaison at York University's Career Center, which is your co-host and co-organizer for today's event. I will be moderating the discussion this afternoon. I would also like to thank the Center for Student Success and the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies for collaborating with us to coordinate this event. The Career Conversation Series is co-sponsored by the Alumni Relations Office, and we'd like to thank them for their generous support. So the purpose of this panel is to provide you with some inspiration, some insight, some advice, and an opportunity to do a little bit of networking with our alumni panelists as well, and learn from their career stories, learn from their experiences and pick their brains, and see what kinds of ideas they might generate and inspire in you. So before we begin, I'd like to ask all of you to please turn off your cell phones and mobile devices so that we can be free of interruptions. And if you haven't already done so, make sure before you leave today that you just sign in at the registration table right outside the doors. We do have some materials, some Career Center booklets on the table, as well as a flyer about our upcoming Graduate and Professional Studies Expo, which is this Thursday. So if you are interested in further education at the postgrad or graduate level, then please, we invite you to come to the Graduate and Professional Studies Expo on Thursday. So we will have about an hour for discussion. I'll get the discussion started with a few questions, and then we have an audience mic in the middle of the room. So later on, I'll prompt you and invite some questions from the audience. And then we at about 20 to 4, we will break out into our informal networking mix and mingle session, and that'll give you an opportunity to speak to our panelists face to face and ask any specific questions or more customized, personalized questions you may have, not in a large group format, but more face to face. Okay? So we would not be here today without our distinguished guests, so let me introduce them to you. On my immediate right is Cecelia Paolucci, Senior Manager, Resource Development for United Way Toronto. Next to Cecelia is Christopher Tuckwood, Executive Director of the Sentinel Project for Genocide Prevention. Next to Christopher is Anna Skinner, Program Manager with Laidlaw Foundation. Next to Anna is Nora, Chair of the Board of Directors with Yellow Brick House. Next to Nora is Mary Al-Bagli, President of the Student Parents in Networks Incorporated and founder and president of Student Association for Single Parents. And finally, next to Mary is Sarah Asghari, Development Officer with the Toronto Community Foundation. So let me begin. I'll get us started by asking our panelists, and maybe we'll start with Cecelia first, to introduce themselves to us and briefly tell us about their role, their key responsibilities within the current organization that they're with.
Sure. Thanks, Sandra. Hello, everyone. I'm really very honored to be here. It's great to come back to York and talk to you about careers in the not-for-profit sector. So my role, I work at the United Way of Toronto, where I'm a Senior Manager in Resource Development, or AKA fundraising. I manage a team of professional fundraisers and senior volunteers to develop donor relationships and implement strategies to reach our revenue goal. Our revenue goal for this year is $116 million in Toronto, so it's quite ambitious, and I enjoy it very much.
Okay, so my role as the executive director really encompasses quite a bit. It's a bit, I guess since I don't really have anybody providing me with a lot of guidance, it's up to me to sort of decide on my own job description, and sometimes I end up doing a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be doing, but really it's about sort of setting a vision and goals for the organization, and then building a team to try and achieve those, and making sure that they get the resources that they need to achieve those goals.
So my name's Anna Skinner, and I work at the Laidlaw Foundation, which is a small private charitable foundation. So our main role is really on the grant making side of things. So instead of on the fundraising side, we actually are there to give out grants and financial support to different projects. And I manage a program that focuses on youth-led projects and youth organizing. And so in that capacity, again, I'm kind of working with groups often from they have an initial idea around a project, or they're a really new group, haven't had any funding before, and they're developing their first grant applications. And so I support them through that. And then if they are approved for funding by the organization, I work with them as our kind of grantees. And also involved in doing a lot of kind of hands-on capacity work, whether it's kind of workshops around grant writing or strategic planning or just about anything. I get calls all the time from my grantees, so it's really kind of every day is a little bit different.
Hi everybody, my name is Nora Priestley, and my position is a little bit different than the ones you've met so far in the sense that I am a volunteer. I am a chair or co-chair for the board of directors for the organization called Yellow Brick House. So Yellow Brick House is in York Region. It is a multitude of services that serve women and children trying to seek refuge and rebuild lives from domestic violence. So my role is very much a volunteer position in a governance capacity as a board of directors. The board of directors oversees everything that is going on in the operation to make sure that the dollars, the donations and monies that come to us are being used in the intention that they are supposed to, as well as helping and to support the operational executive director and the operational needs of the organization. Very quickly, Yellow Brick House has been in York Region for about 34 years, has now two 24/7 shelters for women and children, for emergency shelter, has also transitional housing, countless numbers of counseling programs and for children, for women, as well as legal aid, legal support, as well as every form of counseling and help that they can need, as well as donations, physical donations, as well as the money to run the program. So it's a very big organization for one region, and it has been a pleasure. Although we oversee governance, we have had our hands in capital campaign, grant writing applications, and many of the things that we'll be discussing here today. Thank you.
Hi. My role in leadership actually started here at York. I started school about 4 years ago as a single parent, and I felt like there was no community here to support single parents, and there was a lot of services that were needed, but they were not made available. So I started the Student Association for Single Parents with the support of many faculty and students. And within a couple of years, the association grew and it became large. There's over 400 members, and we were able to identify a lot of needs that single parents required to pursue their education at York, including scholarship opportunities, assistance with academic writing, research assistance, and also childcare expenses, personal needs that would allow them to successfully complete their degree. So that's what the association started with, and we found a large need, and then through that organization I was able to work in the government sector, and I met a lot of parents in the community who say, I wanted to go to school, but I just don't know how to get started. So that kind of inspired me to take the organization outside of York. So my role right now is the president of SPIN, Student Parents and Networks, and it's basically reaching out to parents who do want to pursue post-secondary education and help them throughout the process of applying, also counseling, mentorship programs, and we also have scholarship opportunities. And then once they're in, the idea is that for the association at York to kind of continue the support throughout their whole education.
Sarah. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Asghari and I work at the Toronto Community Foundation. The Toronto Community Foundation has been around for over 30 years. Our fundraising that we do is a bit different than some other charities in that our fundraising is endowment based.
So we have over 350 families who have the equivalent of a private family foundation under our umbrella. And we have some agencies as well who have brought their assets to us. So we have over $250 million in endowments. And we can get more into endowments later, but what endowments are is we don't spend the capital. The capital is reserved in perpetuity. And we invest the endowments, and the earnings are available to all the fund holders who have those equivalent of private family foundations to grant to any registered Canadian charity. And on top of that, we also do our own city building initiatives where we have our endowment that we grant to other local Toronto charities. So every year we issue the Vital Signs report. I don't know if anyone got to see it this year. And through the report, we identify critical issues in Toronto that need attention, and we use that to direct our grant making. And I'm part of a team right now, a team of 3, and we are raising $100 million to add to our endowment.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we'll come back to Cecelia now, and if I could ask our panelists to briefly share an overview of your career story. Tell us, how you became interested in this field, nonprofit, charitable, non-governmental, and social justice field, and how did you get your career started? How did you get the organization? For those of you who started your own organizations, how did you get the organization started? And sort of how did you get into this field?
I think I've always had an interest in not-for-profit management since I was very young. I started off as a musician. It was in my family, and I carried it on. And at some point, I decided that I was doing my Bachelor of Commerce degree, and I thought I was very involved at that time as a volunteer in the performing arts sector, as well as on boards of directors, so looking at governance issues in performing arts. And at some point I decided that I didn't want to create the music, but I wanted to help make the music happen. So I came here to York, because York at the MBA, in the MBA program, has one of the only programs in North America where you can also take a dual degree of MBA and Arts and Media Administration graduate diploma. So I took the opportunity to move here and build on my strengths in business with an international management focus and strategic management focus, combined with the arts administration diploma. I thought that was a nice natural transition from musician to management. I was able to kind of launch my career through York alumni. I went out, I was recruited out through the MBA program to work for a company that had a monopoly in music publishing in Canada, and 4 out of the 5 senior executives there were York graduates. So that was really strong because they knew my capabilities and my training, and they were able to play to that and really help me develop. Then I moved out to the for-profit sector to gain some experience in market research, PR and communications, as well as working for an international accounting firm in project management. And then came back into the arts as an executive director of an international music festival, which I was founding, and moved on after that to another international summer music festival, which I was also the founding executive director of. So I helped to build that up. That was the Toronto Summer Music Festival for the first 5 years. I did some consulting in between jobs and a lot of networking with pretty much everyone that I knew and that would refer me to talk to. And then I moved on, focused more on social services and building on my fundraising, recently acquired fundraising credential of the Certified Fundraising Executive designation to work for the United Way, which brings together a lot of what I've been doing in terms of board work, senior volunteer work, arts management, and the social services all into one kind of nice package.
Great, thank you. Yes.
So for me, I think because I'm one of the co-founders of the Sentinel project, kind of the organization's story and my story go together. So I'll tell a bit more, I guess, about the origin of both of us. The way the birth of the Sentinel project, I guess, came about during my time as an undergrad at Waterloo. I had been pretty involved with a lot of other people I knew in doing sort of anti-genocide activism as an undergrad. At that time, we were specifically focused on Darfur, region of Sudan, where there were a lot of atrocities taking place at sort of in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, and we did a lot of very traditional, I guess you could say, student activism type of work in terms of raising awareness, raising funds, etc., that sort of thing. Towards the end of my undergrad career, I started to realize that there was a lot more to be done in terms of taking a more direct approach to actually preventing atrocities, or doing something at least to help the people who are in harm's way. So the idea, as I was talking to some other people, came up to actually create an early warning system. What we could term almost sort of a non-profit intelligence agency for the purpose of predicting where genocide is likely to happen, and then using that to direct efforts to actually develop tools and strategies to help the people in harm's way so that they can, if not, hopefully prevent the worst case scenario from happening, but if that does come to pass, that they can also have more communal resilience to to mitigate the impact of those atrocities and have a better chance of surviving. So that was the basic idea of the Sentinel project, and that was about 4 years ago now. In terms of actually starting an organization, it's a fairly simple process from a paperwork perspective, but having never run a nonprofit before, we had a lot to learn, and we're still learning quite a bit. As it is, the organization is still, still entirely volunteer-based, including myself. It's still fairly small. We have about between 50 and 60 people on the team right now, and that sort of thing. We've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Myself and other people included. I guess I'm obligated to take responsibility for a lot of those. So anyway, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we're sort of getting to where we are. So I don't have a background in nonprofit management from prior to starting the Sentinel project, which is why I don't necessarily have a great depth of experience in this area. But in terms of the things that I've had to do in building the organization and trying to get it towards where we're going, I've certainly had quite a breadth of experience, really touching on every different aspect of setting up and running an organization like that. And if you're wondering, I know I mentioned Waterloo, so if you're wondering about my York connection, I went to grad school here and just graduated about a week ago from the Masters of Disaster and Emergency Management program, which I got into actually because I was interested in learning sort of how some of the concepts about managing and mitigating natural or other types of human-made disasters could be applied to dealing with mass atrocities. So that's my story.
Very cool.
Anna?
Sorry. All right, career path. I'm actually asked this question a lot, and I always kind of say it's a bit of a choose your own adventure. So I ended up at the foundation. I'm not entirely sure how I ended up there, but similarly, I guess I can just tell a series of different stories. I think I was involved, and I feel like most people in this room can probably connect to the idea of you're doing things because you want to see them happen, and it never really dawns on you that you could get paid for it or that it could be a career. So while I was in school, I often was juggling about 4 different things. So student, I was lucky enough to get to work on a series of different community-based research projects, which were in my kind of passion area around food justice work. So that helped pay a little bit of the bills, but not too much. I was also an avid volunteer with this organization called the Stop Community Food Center. And I remember I literally, and this was about 10 years ago, I would just show up. And so for about 2 years straight, I would do food bank intake. So I was there every single Thursday, and I would do that. And then while I was in the organization, I connected with some other volunteers, and we were all kind of passionate about popular education, passionate about environmental justice and social justice. And so we started playing around in a greenhouse in a high school and connecting young people in that school into the greenhouse using gardening as a way of talking about broader kind of international issues, but also their local experiences, kind of both just struggling in the school system and the lack of relatable curriculum, but also experiences of hunger in the community. And then the fourth thing that I was always involved in is kind of what I call like the livelihood strategy. So I was waitressing and bartending because my philosophy was always that I could make money doing that, and that then allowed me to have the time to volunteer and to be involved in all these other kinds of projects. It meant I could be involved in these research projects, which themselves weren't particularly lucrative, but were really fueled my kind of interest and passion. So all that to say, I was kind of just doing these different things, and magically bills were getting paid, and I was working away at getting my undergrad. And I got connected to the Laidlaw Foundation, where I now work, because this was about 8 years ago. They were starting to shift to a stronger focus on young people, and one of the things they were looking at is how to embed young people across their governance. So we're hearing from the panel around kind of, at the board of directors level, but also in my organization, all the grant decisions are made by community members. So we have advisory committees. And so I actually got connected because I originally applied to be on a volunteer on an advisory committee. And I remember my interview got canceled the night before. I got an email from the woman saying, sorry, something's come up, can't meet you. And I didn't think too much of it, because one, I happen to know I'm a pretty kick-ass volunteer, and I figured there'd just be somewhere else to put my time. And a month later, I got an email from my executive director saying, hey, I know you had this meeting, do you want to come in? So again, at this point, I'm meeting with him, and we're having this really great, when you're in a space, and partly because it's not a job interview, it's like a volunteer interview, so you're really just laying it out there. And he kept saying, yeah, this is really great, but we have to hire a new staff person, and that staff person will recruit new volunteers. And so at a certain point, I just said, okay, I think I'm going to apply for that job. And he was like, all right, go for it, sent me the posting. And I think because it was a particular point in time with the organization, I know they had interviewed about 6 people ahead of me, and I think they weren't quite finding the right match. And I feel like, I swear he kind of went into his fold and was like, all right, I've got this one person. Because I was probably the youngest person that was interviewed for the position. I was coming at it from a very different skill set, certainly coming at it from more of a grassroots and community-based perspective. And yeah, interviewed and ended up there. And then over time, my position within the organization has changed and shifted. So just because I know part of it is sharing advice, like one bit I would put out to anyone is, one, you're likely on your career path right now anyways, so just follow things you're interested in. And then the other piece is really that idea of trying to master something. Like they say, it takes 10,000 hours to master something, and really I feel like, especially for a lot of us, we bounce around between a lot of different careers, and I've really found it valuable to be in one place for what's almost been 7 years, because it takes a lot of time sometimes to realize what is it that you don't know and you're uncomfortable with and that you can learn, and what is it that's organizational culture. And I think that, definitely the first few years were hard, really engaging, but hard. And so I'm still kind of on my path.
Awesome. There certainly is a theme of serendipity, isn't there? That it isn't just a straight line between 2 points that gets people to where they are happiest and where they want to be. And that was very much the case with me. I've always had the traditional daytime job, actually here at York, and but had always volunteered. And was winding down on a couple of volunteer obligations that I had, and I swear to you, had no sooner thought had crossed my mind, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Where a friend of a friend called out and said, I've got a good friend of mine, she's on a board, they're looking for more members, you live in that area, do you know about the organization? I said, of course, I grew up in this town, I know this organization quite well, would you be interested? And it was really a very, opportunity and good timing, because what it told me was, it was my opportunity, my chance to volunteer in something that I had no membership in. Up until that point, you helped out with this organization because my kids were involved, or you helped out doing this because, you know, your church, because you belong to your church. And that's all very important, and I'm not suggesting that you don't do that, but it was a chance to volunteer in something that I hadn't made use of the services. I hadn't participated or had membership in. So it was a really good chance to be involved from another perspective. So it was great, and it was really a combination of timing and opportunity. It is challenging to have your regular daytime job, your family, your other interests, etc., and make the time for volunteering. But I think it is, I guarantee you, and I suspect other volunteers will say this too, you get out of it what you put into it. In fact, I suggest you get more out of it. The opportunities that I've had, that my work and my job just hasn't necessarily given me a lot of exposure to. I've dealt with all levels of government in our quest for drawing attention to the issues of domestic violence, or how laws and policies are changing and how that may or may not be a disadvantage to children or disadvantage to women. We've also done a major capital campaign in the last couple of years. There was a tremendous unmet need for emergency shelter in York Region. They talk about one shelter for every 50,000 women across Canada, and there was York Region of a population of over 1 million people and 20 beds and 3 cribs. So there was a huge unmet need, and so we started on a capital campaign during the worst economic times, if that wasn't already enough of a challenge, and proceeded to open up a second shelter just this past February, in fact, in the Markham area, to help, again, address a part of the region that just didn't have much at all in that area. So the idea of dealing with policies, the idea of financial governance and overseeing the structure, volunteer management, getting other volunteers to participate in the organization, from everything from sorting out the storage room through to the board of directors. The more activities that can be done for the organization by volunteer keeps the dollars that people donate in the resources that directly affect the women and children, and in counseling and capacities like that. So we have to oversee all of that, keep all those balls in the air. So incredibly enjoyable and challenging, and I'm constantly learning. I quite honestly get to meet and interact with some pretty amazing individuals. The people that step forward to do this type of activity have lots to offer, and I'm constantly learning from them. The counselors that are involved in the organization are nothing short of amazing. Everybody speaks at least one other language. They've got lots of education, many of them from York University here, and have a lot to offer these women and children, but they're also seeing their role as advocates. We have an amazing relationship with the York Region Police as well as the Crown Attorney's Office. So we know we're not just looking after the operations of the organization, but we're also keeping well connected to what's going on in the sector and how might we best affect change. So I find it very satisfying.
Okay. So I started during my first year at York. I started volunteering in different organizations, departments, associations, and I knew that whatever I was going to do, I just wanted to help people. And until today, that's kind of my model, and I really tried to stick to it. So it kind of volunteering for different organizations allowed me to see how organizations are built, how they're governed, how they're mediated, how they're managed. And I know myself in terms of I usually like to kind of go in there, figure it out, and take a leadership role. So I did that my first year. I kind of took different lessons and skills from different organizations, and I thought, why not kind of create a space at York? And that's what I did. I remember an advice I got when I was young is always, if you can't find a way, make one. So as a single parent at York, I kind of knew my struggles as a student and as a parent. It's usually I don't have enough time to study. I have to take care of my daughter. So after this seminar, normally I'm going to run I live in Mississauga, so I have to run to get her and kind of juggle both. So I thought for a second, I started meeting parents, and I was very happy to know it wasn't just me with these kind of struggles, and they also shared the same kind of experiences. So, and also seeing my mom when I was younger. My mom was a single parent, and she went back to school with 4 kids, and she did it. So I was very proud of her. I was very glad to represent the family and kind of move on in the same train. So SASP allowed me to do that at the association at York. We started kind of looking for gaps at York recently because of SASP. There's change tables at York, so I'm very happy with that. We also gave, our first year we gave out 4 scholarships, and currently we're trying to come up with future scholarship. We're trying to come up with kind of like a lifetime scholarship with the endowment fund that you were mentioning. And just kind of help parents as much as possible. And so I stuck to my model of helping others and kind of creating a way, and I carried that through. I'm still at York, so I wish I had the opportunity that you all have putting more time into the association. I don't exactly, but I think I know for sure that it would not be possible with the volunteers, the executives. The association at York now has an incredible new president. And the idea is to just kind of help parents as much as we can.
Thank you. Sarah?
Okay, so like many of you, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I got to my 3rd year at York, and I was trying to figure out if I was going to pursue, graduate studies, if I was going to go to law school, and nothing really resonated with me. So I sort of stumbled through my 3rd year and got to my 4th year and really started thinking about what I wanted to do. And a lot like the people on the panel here, the idea of helping others and giving back was something that was fundamentally inside of me, and it was just something that I wanted to do. So I started looking at the charitable sector, and I just started talking to everyone in my networks. At the time I was bartending, and the person that I work with said, my mom has this friend who works for this organization, and they're looking for someone, I could try and, get a call in or an interview. And I said, oh, that would be great, that would be amazing, could you? And so it did. She called me. The person was the director of marketing at the Childhood Cancer Foundation. She called me over the phone. She asked me what I studied at York, my experiences. I got an interview. I went in, and they hired me, and I was the 4th member of their team. So I was so fortunate to deal with so many different aspects to do with the charitable sector. So advocacy, grant making, proposals, and sorry, Sandra, I'm sort of cognizant of the fact that a lot of these terminologies we know, but maybe we need to sort of explain it, like volunteer management and board of directors. You may not even know what all that means. So, oh, sorry, can you hear me better now? So they may not even know, I don't even think I knew what a board of directors does when I was in university, so it might be helpful for us to talk about that. And so I was there for just over 3 years, and then I moved to the independent school sector, which is private school, and I worked there for over 3 years. And same thing, so private schools in Canada don't have any government funding, and their administration costs are covered by tuition, but anything above and beyond that, so if they need new playgrounds or new computers or a new track, that's all done through fundraising. So I was there for 3 years, and then I just recently moved to the Toronto Community Foundation. And like I mentioned, I'm part of raising capital funds, which is a large amount of money. So when we say capital campaigns, it's sort of your board of directors has decided that there's a need for an excessive amount of funds to be injected into the organization. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, for being cognizant of the all of that. And there will be an opportunity for students to ask questions later, so if there's need for clarification, I'm sure they will ask. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then if anybody has a question, now's the time to start working up the courage to get up to the mic and
that's scary.
Panelist. But I'll ask a question just so that it gives you a bit of time to summon up the courage. So students I interact with often ask the question about what can I do with my degree, and, you know, sort of like what you said, Sarah. You know, what are my options? What are, you know, I know what I'm interested in, but I have no idea what the career possibilities are for me. And many students I interact with are convinced that their degree basically defines or determines what they can do with their lives. So it's really nice to hear, you know, this great diversity of career stories, and that, you know, your what you studied, your major, was only one part of your career path. And in fact, you know, there were so many other factors: opportunity, being in the right place at the right time, talking to someone, you know, a conversation that led to something, and so networking, and just your genuine interest and passion in the field, and timing, all of those kinds of things. So my question for you is there anything else that you'd like to tell students or graduating students, like any specific advice you have for them with regard to what they can be doing now to prepare themselves for a career in this field? Cecelia, would you like to start?
Well, I think I'd like to start by saying something that someone's already said here, which is that you're probably already on your career path. You just don't realize it yet. I think when I talk to people that are about to graduate or recent graduates, I often talk about a natural fit and looking into yourselves and your experience and your past experience for what is a natural fit. There's strengths that you all have that tie into your areas of study, that tie into your aspirations. And I think everyone needs to do a little bit of reflection on what they've already done, on what they're interested in, on what their field of study is, and where their connections lie. Because I think if you combine those four things, and it might not be into something specific, like I want job X at company Y, but it might be into a field where you can then start pursuing research and interviews with people in that area.
Good suggestion.
So I guess I'll kind of answer that question in a way that will apply more to anybody in the room that might be thinking about starting their own organization, but I'm sure it would also be helpful to others as well. So I guess I'll say two things. One being something that did benefit me and that I recommend you do, and another that I didn't know early on and I wish I had. So the thing that did benefit me was, as an undergrad, being involved in starting clubs, running clubs. You know, as a student, if you've still got some time left in your academic career before you graduate, and there is a particular issue that you're interested in, or it doesn't even have to be necessarily issue-based, but if there's sort of an idea for a social organization or something recreational that you think you might want to start, I recommend that you go ahead and do it. Because it's essentially practice for running a nonprofit or running a business or what have you. It gives you great sort of management experience, leadership experience. If you're doing events, it gives you experience with managing money, doing advertising, marketing, etc., all those different things. So that was a big advantage to me in terms of sort of running an organization. There were some things that I developed as an undergrad that I could apply later on. In terms of what I didn't know, or I guess didn't pay enough attention to at the time, was that the term nonprofit is a bit of a misnomer. Because a lot of people who aren't really involved in nonprofits hear that and think that nobody's getting paid, the organization isn't really making any money, all this sort of thing. There honestly are a lot of people out there who think that everybody in the nonprofit sector is a volunteer. And when they find out that some people get salaries and some people get pretty good salaries, they're shocked and often horrified. And that's a problem for a lot of reasons. And it's also a problem if people who are thinking about going into the sector, and especially starting an organization, don't realize that it's not just okay for you to make money, but you actually need to, both as an organization and as an individual, because both have bills to pay. And the ideal for anybody, certainly for me, would be to actually get a salary and work on your cause full time. And you're going to be able to serve that cause a lot more effectively. So really the biggest thing that I wish I had realized early on was that starting a nonprofit and running a nonprofit is the same as starting and running a business. You really do have to worry a lot about where money is going to come from, whether that's traditional donation-based fundraising or if you do earn revenue through more traditional business activities to offer an actual product or service to bring money in the door, etc. It's very important to get that kind of management experience and understand that you are essentially starting a business, and always keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Oh yeah, so in terms of advice, I mean, one, I think, and it's something I hold to myself too, is that we can't always, and I said this earlier, you can't know what your destination is, so my experience has been working in this field that there are as many people who work in nonprofits or who start up their own kind of grassroots groups and collectives who have commerce degrees, as have kind of sociology degrees, as have no degrees at all, right? That there is no one perfect degree or perfect accreditation that's going to land you your dream job. So in some way, and I just think that's important, because what I really have come to see is that there are so many different kinds of talents and skills that we all have that don't always get summed up neatly on a resume. And that, at the end of the day, is, I think, what most kind of organizations, be it for-profit, non-profit, are kind of looking into. And so I think just that ability to kind of be creative, the ability to work as a team. I mean, we hear this all the time. We've been hearing it since kindergarten, but it's really important to kind of think through, what's your work style? What kind of work environment are you looking for? I'd almost put that out to you more than specifically what kind of job title are you looking for. Like, do you want to work in a really kind of small startup kind of environment, of which a lot of nonprofit work is? Do you want to work in an environment where there's a really clear job description? Well, there probably a large organization might offer you that. Do you want to work in a small team, a big team? And those are all things, again, I certainly didn't really know that until I started working and started realizing what are the kind of environments that I want to be in. So yeah, in terms of advice, I really ascribe by the whole, like, you're seriously in motion right now, so follow the things that you're interested in, and it's okay. And for the reality is, for a lot of us, we had to do other things to pay the bills for a while, to a certain point in time. But while we're doing those things, I mean, the amount of skills I've gained in the service industry and how transferable that is to every single environment I'm in now is huge. And so to never discredit the other kind of work that you're doing either. Because I think at the end of the day, when it comes time to meeting, to networking, to interviews, it's really recognizing and being able to share your breadth of experience, not just that you have a particular degree. So yeah, not to get too worried about, do I have the right degree? Because there is no one.
I completely agree and would like to build on that a little bit. Just the ability to learn that everything you are doing is adding to your backpack of knowledge and your abilities, and just taking stock of that every now and then to realize, wait a minute, I managed to do this and this. I probably can figure out how to do these things over here. And I think that really does build confidence and shows real capability. I think it also is helpful to stop and look about not just what you would like to do, but what were some of the things that you feel you haven't, your jobs or your experiences up to now haven't really given you an opportunity to. You might work in a job, for example, that doesn't have a lot of financial management, and your role in participating in a certain organization may actually give you some of that exposure. And that's a great thing to be able to add onto your resume to the next job, or maybe 3 jobs down the road. You'll at least have shown that you've given yourself that opportunity to add on and build on, and it is all vital. Thank you.
Okay, so I tried to write down a couple of things to kind of say, but just building on what was said, I would suggest don't let your degree define you. I say you define your degree. For example, I did an undergrad in sociology to really get an understanding of why I wanted to start the association for single parents, especially the community one. I did research and I found out that in the Jane and Finch area, there's the highest amount of single parents who are on social assistance and the second least subsidized childcare space available. So that really inspired me, and it kind of goes to my first point or advice I would have for you: stick to your passion, know what inspires you, and keep researching your inspiration, and that will motivate you to even push yourself further. My second advice would be, don't say no to opportunities. say yes to everything. Even if you can't make it, send someone, they'll take the notes for you. Don't say no. My last thing is keep knocking on doors. Even if they don't open, eventually people will get tired of you knocking, they will open. No doesn't mean no, it just means not right now. I remember when I first started the association at York, I was looking for office space, and many people said to me, oh, you're a new organization, you'll never get it. I knocked and knocked and knocked on the master's door at McLaughlin College, and we've had the office space ever since.
Yes.
We've had mailbox, we've had any kind of thing you can think of. We've had funding from the faculty, different organization on campus, off campus. It's to the point that people come to you and say, I want to help. You're not looking for the help anymore. So just keep knocking, get your name out there, and don't let what people say stop you.
Nice.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. I have an undergraduate degree in politics and law and society, and I can tell you with the 20 people that I work with, we have all different degrees. Some went to college, some went to university, and that's one of the things with the charitable sector is that you're not really limited to having a certain degree or expertise when you enter the field. It really is your passion, your drive, excuse me, and really using the skills that you've built throughout, not just university, but even before that to sort of get your foot in the door. And I completely agree. You just need to talk to everyone. You need to network. Networking is great. And putting yourself out there. And I also just want to say one thing. So there is a difference between a not-for-profit and a charity. And we can talk about that later, but I just wanted to clarify that a charity issues, that would be one of the main biggest differences is that we issue receipts for any donations that we receive, and not-for-profits don't necessarily do that. They don't have that capacity to do that. Oh, and I just wanted to say one more thing, sorry. Someone was speaking about salaries. So charities in Canada are all registered under the Canadian Revenue Agency. So you're welcome to go and explore different charities, and they do publicly put in salaries and salary ranges. So that might be helpful for you too. I know I get that question a lot, do you get paid well? How much is it? So that's available to you, and you can just visit the CRA for that.
Great, thank you. Nobody has a question? Okay, so you have to stand at the microphone. You can
Just line up.
How much volunteer experience does one need to get into this field?
You want to take that?
Not to give a potentially cryptic answer, I don't think it's how much at all. Like, it's not about, again, logging hours as much as thinking about it from what are the kinds of skills that you're gaining from it. So in some ways, and this could be by spending a lot of time in one organization, but playing different roles within it. So you're learning everything from, running workshops to the importance of stuffing envelopes, right? Like, they're all important. So there's that kind of breadth of experience that you can gain volunteering. And then I also think I would put forward the breadth of networks you can gain from volunteering in different organizations or different, or organizations involved in different parts of the sector, right? Like, you look at a panel like here, we have everything from kind of looking at genocide and more internationally focused issues to a local kind of shelter system. So those all technically fall under the same broad banner of kind of the not-for-profit. So I'd worry. I guess I'd say there's no like magic number, but kind of. I think the only other thing I'd say, and perhaps everyone would echo too, is you want to be a good volunteer, right? So instead of bouncing around from one place to another, I think being able to really make a contribution to wherever you are will help you out in the long run more, because you'll have references. Like, every job, or when I was applying for grad school, everywhere I've ever applied, I've been able to use equal amounts references from my volunteer positions as from paid positions. So, yeah.
I'd just like to add to that along the same lines, is think of it as really building skills for your career and for your resume too. But if you're not going to get paid for something, if you want to volunteer and you find a specific project you want to volunteer on, stay with it, build up your skills. And I've seen resumes come in that they don't even list if it was paid or unpaid. It might be a volunteer position. They've got some great experience, and then they have a paid position. So don't think of it only as just volunteering. It's really a career building.
Absolutely.
Yep. Next question.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is on, you guys talked about a lot about the hidden job market, making those network connections and talking to your friend's mother and different things like that. And I think that's wonderful. And I've been trying to do a lot of that myself. I've been volunteering a lot, and my trouble has been, the organization that I was volunteering for wanted to hire me, but they didn't have the funding. So now I'm back on the job market, and I am on Charity Village every single day. I am calling up all my other contacts, and I just want to ask if there's any other advice you have for someone in this kind of position.
I'd love to answer that.
Yes.
So I've had 2 periods where I have been looking for work. And I'll tell you something about the hidden job market. It's a bit like dating. So would you rather date someone you know, or just have a blind date because your friend says, there's this thing out here, there's this posting on eHarmony, and I think you'd be a good match, right? So think of networking that way. So yes, it's a hidden job market, but truthfully, you probably would want to work with someone that you know and that you've connected with versus some random posting that you see. And you just cannot underestimate the value of connecting with other people. I got a job once because someone in Toronto talked to someone in England who talked to someone in Ottawa that I didn't even know, and then they called me for an interview. And I had no idea, but I had connected with someone who told someone, like we've all said. And you just never know when your name is going to be top of mind because a job opportunity comes across someone's desk and they're like, who did I recently talk to? Oh yeah, it was you. Okay, I'll just send her the job posting and see if she was interested. It just happens. These things just happen like that.
I think you're on the right track. I mean, if you think about what you're doing versus someone who's not even doing what you're doing, I mean, the likelihood of you landing that job is, much more likely. So I think you're doing the right thing, and I think we're all sort of echoing the same sentiments that it's important to volunteer and to get into an organization. One of my colleagues just got hired because she volunteered with us over the summer, and at the time, she wanted a job, and it was her intent to volunteer to get a job. But exactly like what you're saying, we didn't have the funding. 6 months later, someone left, so just keep at it.
It's like what Mary said, it's not no, it's no right now.
Exactly.
No, we don't have funding now, but if we have funding in a year, you'll be top of mind.
Yeah, exactly.
And just remember one thing, if everything happens in life for a reason, I really believe that. So maybe you didn't get this position, there's something else out there. It will just come your way. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Before we go on to the next question, I just wanted to follow up on the question about networking and volunteering. So from your experience being in the field, what do you, when you look to, or when your organization looks to hire someone, what do you look for in a volunteer, or what do you look for when someone is networking with you, and then how do they become top of mind and someone who you think they would be a great addition to our team?
I'd say commitment and passion. Yeah, definitely. Those would be my 2.
Yeah. They've been consistent indicators for, as we've gone from hiring someone that was maybe part-time to full-time, or our contract position to a full-time. We're drawing on those that we already know, those that we've already seen experience, and the executive director very quickly is zeroing in on the people that have shown that commitment. And sounds old-fashioned, but work ethic. Yeah. Someone was counting on you to answer the phones starting at 9 a.m. and you were there to answer the phones at 9 a.m., not, when you managed to get there. But it's important. These organizations, even though they're non-for-profit or charity organizations, they still have to run like a business. They still have to sound like a business when their donors call in. So they rely on people to act like it's a paying job.
And just one other bit on that is, I love when I get to pull out catchphrases deep in my brain. That whole notion of kind of luck really being opportunity meets preparation, right? And to not underestimate. So again, the importance when I say being a good volunteer, it's about, again, if you're passionate about something and showing that commitment and being there at 9 in the morning and being there consistently so that you become known as that, as a reliable person, so that when luck would have it and a position opens up, you've already kind of shown that you're prepared and you're proven for that. I think the other piece, and I do really think about this back to my own career journey, so I go back to this whole, the very first point of contact I had with the organization I now work for was coming in to potentially volunteer. I now realize, because I interview potential volunteers for the same type of role, how prepared I was for that interview compared to the people I interviewed to take on a similar role. Like, I was sitting there rhyming off the program guidelines. I was already making observations about some of the people that the organization had been funding and my showing interest in. I said that because I had spent, I took it seriously. I knew I was meeting with someone from the organization, and I spent 2 or 3 days going through the website, going through materials, talking to people I knew who knew the organization so that I understood what the organization was doing. And that was just to potentially volunteer. And again, having said that, I now recognize when I'm meeting with volunteers, it's really obvious when someone hasn't even looked at our website and they don't even know why they're meeting with me. And they're lovely and they're doing great things, but we're kind of stumped for conversation because they haven't done some preparation. And so just that sense of whether you're going to kind of a networking event or different things, take a little time to know about it. And chances are, if you're passionate about it anyways, it's not the kind of work that's actually work, right? You just get to spend some time imagining yourself in some really interesting spaces, but that preparation is huge.
Okay, next question.
Kind of touched on a topic that everybody kind of spoke on. Somebody's coming to end of my academic career. If I do graduate there, I'm not sure of yet. A lot of my family members and a lot of my personal life, with a lot of my friends, I've started projects and we have an organization going that does take up a lot of my time, and we've gotten funding for the first time from the Laidlaw Foundation. Thanks.
Sweet, I love good news.
So we started moving away from this we used to be a bunch of before getting money as nonprofits was somehow really horrible. We shouldn't be doing that. But we become more mature because we come to the point where purely volunteer work isn't enough to keep running organizations, especially at a certain level of professionalism, and people are trying to depend on you to deliver certain things. So the first part of the question is, I'm starting a lot of questions from my family members where they're like, okay, you're finishing your degree, time to get a job, to get kind of more fully employed, more kind of the more traditional career path. And then how I'm sure you've all probably worked with that, especially when you're oh, that's just a volunteer thing. You're doing that for fun. It's not really a career path. So what are you doing? What's your real plan? So that kind of deal. I'm coming to that phase right now. And I'm well, I don't want to really excuse me, because I understand there's a little bit of that a sense of luck. It's not really a straight path field. It's sometimes you're gonna get that left field thing, and you're gonna get a job, and you're gonna go I've got some great opportunities like that. So really explaining that to my family, we're pretty just you get a job and you just keep on working through it, especially because I've just recently kind of left my old kind of career corporate path. As well as somebody that is part of an organization that's starting to take funding, some important lessons and experiences of we've hired our first person through funding to do actual work, which is a great experience. But doing larger events, you're talking about music festivals, we're doing a huge conference, and these kind of events are coming up. Some kind of experiences and warnings around that, and some lessons that some stumbling blocks we might be able to avoid and to put on our resume.
So your first question, let me just clarify. You're wondering
on the personal aspect, when because it's not a traditional career path, and then a lot of people are questioning you around that.
So you're wondering if
how they would have dealt
advice
with the situation
on how to respond to family or friends who are sort of pressuring you to just get a job.
Exactly, and how to also kind of put on your resume where it does work. It is actually a lot of work, and it's a high level. I'm an executive on a community newspaper, which is I don't get paid for it right now, but it's actually I'm learning a lot of skills.
I think the first, or one of the points I'd make, and Cecelia raised it earlier, is that as long as you're transparent about it when asked and interviewing things, a lot of your volunteer work, when you're actually putting it on your resume, put it on there as work experience. and I mean, so you can list that, you know, you're doing it, providing it in kind, but it's work experience. So from the vantage point of picking up a resume, all of those things are extremely important, and to value them the same way you value paid employment. So yes, that's just the kind of the first piece is give it airtime, absolutely. And just two potential resources, partly because I feel like you're hitting on a really ridiculously common experience. And there's no, so I feel like we're bubbling up, or all sorts of like little support groups. Most of them are kind of informal, just people being like, oh my goodness, like this is what's going on with my family or with my friends, or, you know, how do I explain to my friends who are making so much more, like what's going on. But check out the Ontario Nonprofit Network. And this is kind of for everyone here. One of the things, and I'm hoping you can find it from their website, but there's an entire like crew of young people working in the nonprofit network who are kind of informally meeting. And I think it's being called Connect the Sector. So they have their own webpage, but I mean, in Toronto, there'll be, you know, relatively frequent meetups of people. And a lot of the folks involved are in paid roles, and a lot of folks involved are in non-paid roles within the non-for-profit sector. So that might just be, again, a little space. And also, there was a publication that came out through Dream Now a few years ago called Occupation Changed the World. So if you want to hand off some reading to your parents and or to anybody, it was, they just interviewed a whole bunch of people within, I'd say, the kind of 20 to 40 age range, looking at this. And I think within that, it's really about the idea of like occupation changed the world. It's not that I necessarily need to work for a nonprofit or a for-profit. At the end of the day, my concern is about changing the world, and just what are young people's take on how they're changing the world and career options that are out there. So you can just at least hopefully let it be known that it's a very normal thing for young people to be working and dedicating their time. Yeah.
And I think it's important that your parents know this will lead you somewhere. You're not going to forever be unemployed.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is all part of a bigger plan for you. And I think that's what you need to sort of start realizing, that, you know, like we said, you're already on your career path, and maybe you're not making the salary that you want, or you're not exactly in the role that you know, you picture yourself 5-10 years, but it's going to lead somewhere.
It's a bit like Christopher here. I mean, you have a job, you just don't get paid.
Yeah.
And it's a great job. I mean, if you're working, doing a community newspaper, you can segue into publishing. You could work for any kind of print publisher or online publisher. You've just got skills that can transfer. So think about that. You maybe have your mindset on some other path in the not-for-profit, but try to broaden and think of all of your skills and where you might leverage what you're doing now to go somewhere else.
And really, no, that's okay. But I mean, really, if you're dedicated to what you're doing, which it sounds like you are, there's no reason you can't do it while having another job. And that doesn't have to be, you know, a job that's really distanced from what your normal career path would have been. Sure, I mean, depending on what industry you go into, if you're working 80 hours a week, it's going to be hard to do nonprofit work on the side. But if you know, have a more reasonable sort of, you know, work commitments, then you can definitely do it. That's what I do. I'm not unemployed. I have a full-time job as well. And I did a master's degree at the same time that I was running the Sentinel project and all that. So it's really just about your priorities and your level of commitment, and you can definitely make it work. Tell your parents you don't have to be unemployed. It's not a choice. It's not one or the other. It's not the nonprofit or have a non-nonprofit job. You can do both.
Great, thank you for the advice.
My question is, I was wondering what kind of more specific jobs are available for someone with a degree in psychology and undergraduate BA? So like more specific ones would be this kind of, I'm sure.
You're just wondering about career options for psychology?
Yeah, because I heard that today basically you're required to get a master's or PhD in BA. It's not really like that much of a value these days. So I was wondering.
Any education is valuable. I'm sure you've heard that a lot, but it is true. My undergrad degree was in medieval history, so that's not really applicable to anything. Certainly less so than psychology. But that, and also remember that I'm saying what I'm about to say from an entirely volunteer-based organization. So when I say the word hire, put it in air quotes. But when we hire people, we get a really diverse set of individuals coming to us from all over the world, all different fields. bachelor's degrees, no degrees, PhDs, MBAs, software developers, psychologists, etc., historians, political scientists, everything. We don't anywhere in our org chart have a position that says psychologist or political scientist, or we do have some that say software developer, but for the most part, yeah, we don't have positions that correspond to specific degrees or anything like that. So unless you're going to work for a nonprofit maybe that has something related to your field, you're not. I can't answer to say that psychology prepares you for this, but the fact that you have education in general prepares you for a lot.
I want to add that I discovered about 5 years ago that I always need someone with a psychology degree on my team, no matter where I work, because you understand people and thought processes. And one thing that I've learned, and I heard it on a panel discussion when I was at York at one of these, and I really believe it's true, is that when you're on the job, 20% is skill and 80% is working with people. If you can work with people, if you can motivate people, inspire people, negotiate with people, problem solve with people, you're going to do a good job. And obviously, if you're passionate about what you do. So I think, that helps you to work with people. So it's a great degree to have for any job.
Just, I don't know if that student who asked the question was here when you told your career stories, but can we just go down the table and identify your academic backgrounds for those students who didn't get to hear it? So, Cecelia?
So I have a Bachelor of Commerce and an MBA.
So a bachelor's degree in medieval history and a master's of disaster and emergency management.
I have a Bachelor of Environmental Studies, and I'm part-time working towards a master's in social geography.
And I have a bachelor's in communication studies.
I have a bachelor's in sociology, and I'm currently doing a master's in sociology.
And I got a bachelor's in political science and law and society.
So, a wide diversity
Very
of
diverse.
Backgrounds, and they're all in this field doing wonderful things. Does anybody? Oh, we've got time for this.
So my question is regarding something that Nora touched on briefly, and that's how do you change your approach during economic downturns when you're approaching donors, or whether they're corporations or private individuals? Do you have to change the way that you approach them when everybody's worried about cutting costs and saving money? And I ask this because when I approached the company I work for about donating for a not-for-profit, rather it's a charity, I met with we're over budget, or we have to donate to our customers' causes, and in my opinion, it's just that they're being they're giving preferential treatment towards other corporations' charity causes. So generally, how do you approach corporations and private individuals when money is such an issue in today's?
Well, we had no sooner decided to have a capital campaign to work towards a second shelter, and we thought we would be able to raise, it was for $4 million, which is pretty small in comparison to what United Way's goals are, or what a local hospital has to raise to put on an addition. So small dollars, but comparatively a smaller organization. And then the whole economic situation just turned around. So we had to definitely change our timeline. It took longer than we had hoped for. And yes, we did change our approach. And the reality is there's a lot of great organizations out there and a lot of great causes. There's no shortage of good organizations that individuals, philanthropic donors, and corporate donors are willing to give. That's the challenge. You're in competition with great causes and needs. So I think you end up pointing out and trying to illustrate how what the direct impact of your, of that corporation or business or individual giving to your cause would benefit, how it would benefit the fact that it's in their own backyard, perhaps, the fact that it's in their neighborhood. It's very easy for an organization like mine to point out how much domestic violence costs the workforce in time off and sick time and complications with people's lives, how much it costs our healthcare system, how much it costs. So it makes it very easy to talk about the need to help domestic violence issues from an economic perspective. That was one perspective we took. The fact of doing something, often organizations were very happy to be doing something in their own backyards. We had IBM giving us $25,000 this year because it was their big anniversary, worldwide organization, but their givings were to be geared towards the neighborhood in which they work in which their employees live in. They saw a real benefit to that. Had they not pointed out that benefit themselves, that might be another perspective we would have taken and pointing out to large organizations that no, this is for your employees, and lots of organizations have looked to do things like days of caring, where State Farm comes in and paints the shelter from top to bottom and does some very, very physical things. They've donated the paint, but they've also donated the person hours to make a huge and what that has done for morale. So we've suggested to corporations and business that this is often a great team booster, and it isn't dollars in the bank, but it is a huge, it's dollars not coming out of the bank to cover off a capital asset that needs to be taken care of. Those are just some quick suggestions.
I just wanted to say as well, to ensure that when you are approaching, for instance, your corporation, that your organization aligns with their values and their missions. Sometimes you get volunteers who have these great ideas in these organizations and they want to go after them, but once you start dissecting, you realize, okay, well, they more fund, for example, domestic violence or community. So you really need to be sort of do your research with that. And then with individuals, you have to be sensitive that during economic downturns, individuals do sometimes cut back on their giving. But again, it goes back to that they say no, but no doesn't mean no, it's just not now.
I would also say, I don't know your organization's situation or what you guys do, or if this is even an appropriate suggestion, but don't forget that there is, especially if you're a nonprofit, perhaps to a lesser degree if you're a charity, there is also the option of going beyond just sort of asking for money to be given to you, without offering anything tangible in return except maybe a tax receipt. There are sort of earned revenue options. So if you have sort of a capability within your organization that would give you the ability to offer a service or a product in exchange for money, then that's an option as well. A lot of organizations are starting to go that way. A very high level sort of example is the Center for Social Innovation downtown, which raised $2 million last year to purchase and renovate a new building by issuing bonds, which normally is something that corporations and governments do. But there's a lot of organizations now that are starting to issue bonds and actually offer a return to investors instead of donors in order to raise money to fund their operations. That's a pretty grand sort of goal, and I'm not suggesting that you issue bonds or other sort of investment instruments, but just think about that. There are things that you can do to actually earn money instead of going out and asking for it as well, so that people are more likely to write you a check if they're getting something tangible in return.
Okay. So you have one more question? Okay.
Hi. My question is, of which organization am I supposed to join if I want to pursue being a social worker? Like, of your organizations, which one should I focus on?
I think any organization you join will give you skills to go into social work, into business, management. I think all the skills or all the different backgrounds that were mentioned here. Try not to limit your degree or your studies to what is it that you're doing. You can find social work in any kind of thing you do. And I think when you look at some of the careers that come out of the social work programs, it's not just limited to social working and helping people. And I think on the resume, it's not like, well, I want to apply for a business position, so I'll have to show that I'm all in business. No, it's how do I show that I have all the skills it takes to get into the business, but being able to apply from different perspectives. And I think that would be more appealing to someone who's hiring than just someone who's stuck with the same kind of jobs all through.
I can say, though, in particular at United Way, we have two aspects of our organization. One is the fundraising arm that raises the resources, and the second is our community impact team that really deals with those 150 to 200 agencies that we fund in the communities where there's need. And a lot of the people that work there have social work degrees, have sociology, psychology degrees, and they often transfer out into our agencies to run some of the agencies.
I think what the panelists have said earlier is that it's really you need to do your research, find an organization that relates to your interest, your passion, the causes that mean something to you, that speak to you, and then get involved and look for ways to develop the skills that you are interested in developing, or the strengths that you have. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for your questions. So this brings us to the end of our formal Q&A session right now. And our intention for this afternoon's panel was to provide you with an opportunity to hear about different career options and career paths in the field of nonprofit, charitable, non-governmental, and social justice organizations, and to get insight into how you might get your own career started. So we hope that you found the information and advice from our panel helpful and inspiring. I certainly found it very inspiring. Thank you everyone for coming. Please join me in thanking our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to come in and talk to us. If you do have any additional questions about the Career Center, about resumes, or how you can articulate your passions and your interests and your experience on resumes and that kind of thing, come by the Career Center, come talk to me, grab a booklet outside. And we are in 202 McLaughlin College, so not far from here. So now we have an opportunity to mix and mingle.